Tonight, we are turning our attention toward one of the quietest frontiers in the science of the sleeping mind. What does it actually mean when the mind almost wakes up inside a dream? And why do some minds make that crossing, while others, night after night, do not? Science is beginning to offer an answer, and that answer turns out to be less about talent and more about how awareness is built, layer by layer, inside each of us. Welcome to Psychology for Sleep. Wherever you are right now, perhaps already settled, the lights low, your body beginning its slow surrender. Allow yourself this particular kind of stillness. We will move through 100 relaxing facts about lucid dreams. From the neuroscience of a brain that becomes conscious while still asleep, to the quiet personality differences that make some minds more likely to wake inside the dark, to the tender science of why most of us simply dream on without ever knowing. This gentle journey through the dreaming mind creates a small sanctuary for people who spend their nights wondering about the nature of consciousness and rest. A soft subscribe, a like, or a quiet share helps other curious, sleepy minds find their way here. People lying awake right now, asking the same questions you carry tonight. Your curiosity about what happens inside a sleeping mind is exactly the kind of gentle attention that helps this quiet space grow. Let yourself settle completely here. Feel your shoulders release, your jaw unclench, your breath deepen without any effort from you. You do not need to hold on to any of this. Simply let these thoughts drift past, like images at the edge of sleep, present, then softer, then gone, like a room after the last sound has faded, still, unheld, and finally, only yours. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. You are resting where the quietest rooms hold the most feeling. Let your mind soften into the depth it was always built for. And now we begin. Lucid dreaming is the experience of becoming aware that you are dreaming while the dream is still happening. You do not wake up. The body stays asleep. The dream continues. And yet something in the mind quietly steps back and recognizes the situation for what it is. It is one of the most unusual states of consciousness that human beings naturally experience, and it has been documented by researchers, philosophers, and careful self-observers for well over a century. The term itself was first used in a modern scientific context by Dutch psychiatrist Frederik van Rieden in 1913, who kept detailed records of his own dreams for years. He noticed that in certain dreams, his thinking became unusually clear, and he began to call these experiences lucid. The word simply meant clear, but what it described was something far more complex, a mind that had somehow woken up inside its own night. For most of human history, lucid dreaming was considered either a gift, a spiritual practice, or simply the experience of a particularly light sleeper. It was not studied in a laboratory until 1975, when doctoral researcher Keith Hearn, working at the University of Hull in England, designed an elegant method for verifying that a dreamer was truly conscious inside a dream. Because eye muscles are not paralyzed during REM sleep the way the rest of the body is, a lucid dreamer could move their eyes in a pre-arranged pattern. Left, right, left, right, as a signal to researchers watching from outside. When Hearn's participant, Alan Worsley, sent those signals from inside a dream, and they appeared on the electroculographic recording. A bridge had been built across the border between sleep and wakefulness. Hearn had established that a sleeping mind could reach out, and that the signal, when it came, was written in the deliberate movement of the eyes. That eye movement method, first recorded by Hearn in 1975 using electroculographic equipment, became the gold standard of lucid dream research and is still used today, later refined by Stephen LaBerge at Stanford University, who added full polysomnographic monitoring to confirm brainwave activity and muscle atonia alongside eye signals. Dreamers in sleep labs train themselves before bed, fall asleep, enter REM, and when they recognize the dream, signal outward with their eyes. Researchers watching the recording can then match the signal to the exact moment of lucidity. This has allowed scientists to take measurements of the brain at the precise instant when awareness lights up inside a dream. It is a technically difficult experiment to run. Lucid dreams are rare and unpredictable, but over the past 5 decades, enough of these moments have been captured to build a picture of what happens when consciousness crosses the threshold into sleep. A large analysis pooling data from 34 studies and more than 24,000 participants found that roughly 55% of people reported at least one lucid dream in their lifetime. That estimate comes from a 2016 meta-analysis covering 50 years of research. Regular lucid dreamers, people who have them at least once a month, make up only about 23% of the population, and those who have them frequently and spontaneously, without any training or technique, are estimated to be far rarer still. One researcher described this group as perhaps only 1 in 1,000, though the precise figure remains informal and has not been established in a population-wide study. That small, remarkable group has become one of the most studied populations in all of sleep science, because understanding what makes them different may hold the answer to what lucidity actually is. Children are more likely to have lucid dreams than adults. Studies suggest that spontaneous lucid dreaming is most common in childhood, beginning to appear around ages 3 and 4. It tends to decline through early adolescence, and after the age of 25, the natural onset of lucid dreaming without training becomes increasingly uncommon. Researchers believe this may be related to how the developing brain handles the boundary between wakefulness and sleep, a boundary that is less firmly drawn in childhood and more porous in ways that allow awareness to slip through. As the brain matures, that boundary becomes more stable, more efficient, and perhaps less permeable to the kind of crossing that lucid dreaming requires. This is offered as a working hypothesis, not a settled conclusion. The relationship between age and lucidity is still an active area of research. The brain region most consistently linked to lucid dreaming is the prefrontal cortex, specifically its anterior and dorsolateral portions, which sit just behind your forehead. These regions are associated with self-awareness, planning, working memory, and what researchers call metacognition, the ability to think about your own thinking. In normal, non-lucid REM sleep, the prefrontal cortex is significantly less active than during wakefulness. The dreaming brain largely operates without the evaluating, self-monitoring functions that govern daily life. But during lucid dreaming, activity in these frontal regions increases, as if the mind's internal observer has returned A 2012 study using both EEG and fMRI found that the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, frontopolar regions, and areas involved in memory and spatial awareness all showed increased activity during verified lucid dream moments. The light had come back on in part of the house. People who have lucid dreams more frequently tend to show differences in how their brains are wired, even during ordinary waking hours, when no dream is happening at all. Research from the University of Wisconsin found that frequent lucid dreamers have greater functional connectivity between the frontopolar cortex, the most forward-facing part of the frontal lobes, and the temporoparietal junction, a region at the back of the brain involved in self-location and perspective. These connections are measurable during ordinary wakefulness. The brain of a frequent lucid dreamer carries the architecture of awareness as a structural trait, not something switched on only at the moment of the dream, but something quietly present throughout the whole of the sleeping and waking day. The temporoparietal junction deserves a moment of quiet attention. This region, located roughly where the temporal and parietal lobes of the brain meet, is involved in processing the sense of self in space, the feeling of being a body located in a particular place. It also plays a role in perspective taking, in attributing mental states to others, and in detecting when something about a situation does not quite match expectations. In lucid dreaming research, this region appears to be a critical node. It may be the part of the brain that first notices the inconsistencies of a dream, the way physics does not behave correctly, the way a face shifts without reason, the way a room expands in a direction that rooms cannot go. When the temporoparietal junction is sufficiently active, it may be able to flag the experience as internally generated. That flag, researchers believe, may be one of the first sparks of dream lucidity. A major 2025 study published in the Journal of Neuroscience, led by researchers at Radboud University Medical Center in the Netherlands, brought together brainwave data from multiple laboratories around the world to create the largest EEG dataset of verified lucid dreams ever assembled. The researchers found that when lucid dreaming begins, at the exact moment a dreamer signals awareness with their eyes, there is a burst of gamma wave activity in a region called the precuneus, a fold of cortex in the upper rear of the brain involved in self-referential thinking and visual imagery. This burst of gamma activity is one of the clearest neural signatures of the moment consciousness crosses into sleep. Interestingly, the same study found that the overall difference in brain activity between a lucid dream and a regular REM dream was subtler than earlier research had suggested. The brain does not transform entirely. Something more specific and localized changes. The brain of a lucid dreamer looks different from the brain of a regular dreamer precisely at the moment of awareness. And that moment is beginning to reveal something about consciousness itself. The question tonight's video is asking why some people never have lucid dreams, is beginning to find its answer not in willpower or personality alone, but in the precise architecture of how a sleeping brain handles its own awareness. The mind that wakes up inside a dream may be a mind that never quite stops watching itself. And that watching, it turns out, is written into the structure of the brain long before any particular dream begins. Metacognition is one of the most reliable predictors of lucid dream frequency. Metacognition refers to the ability to think about your own mental processes, to notice when you are confused, to recognize when your memory feels unreliable, to step back from your own experience and evaluate it. People who score highly on measures of trait metacognition tend to have lucid dreams more often. This makes a kind of intuitive sense. Lucid dreaming is, in its most fundamental form, a metacognitive event, the mind recognizing its own activity as a dream. A mind that practices this kind of self-monitoring while awake may be more likely to carry that habit into sleep. Researchers have described lucid dreaming as metacognition applied to the dreaming state. By that definition, the door to lucidity is built from the same materials as ordinary self-awareness. Mindfulness meditation appears to increase the frequency of lucid dreams. This connection has been documented in multiple studies and is now considered one of the more robust findings in lucid dream research. Long-term meditators, people who practice for months or years, tend to report significantly more lucid dreams than the general population. A study published in a peer-reviewed psychology journal found that long-term meditators had higher lucid dream frequencies than people who completed an 8-week mindfulness training program, suggesting that the relationship develops slowly over time through sustained practice. The proposed mechanism is that meditation trains exactly the kind of present moment, non-judgmental self-observation that allows a dreaming mind to notice it is dreaming. Meditation, in this sense, is a form of practice for the lucid state, even when carried out entirely in waking life. Mindfulness and meditation are not the only pathways. Video game players, particularly those who play frequently and immersively, have been found to have more lucid dreams than the general population. Researcher Jane Gackenbach proposed that this may be related to how video games train the mind to maintain a dual perspective, fully immersed in the experience while simultaneously aware that it is a constructed environment. This is structurally similar to what a lucid dreamer does, fully inhabiting the dream while also knowing it is a dream. Spatial awareness, a sense of perspective, the habit of navigating a world that is real within its own logic but separate from ordinary waking life. These capacities, it seems, transfer into sleep in ways that researchers are still carefully exploring. Dream, recall. The ability to remember your dreams upon waking is one of the strongest individual predictors of lucid dreaming. People who rarely or never remember their dreams also tend to report far fewer lucid dreams. This may seem circular, but there is more to it than simple memory. The processes that support dream recall, brief awakenings during the night, the retrieval of fragile memory traces before they dissolve, also appear to support the maintenance of consciousness in dreams. A mind that wakes easily and briefly during the night, that holds onto the texture of its inner experience, may be a mind that is more likely to notice it is still in a dream before fully returning to sleep. Dream recall, researchers suggest, may be less a passive outcome and more an active capacity, and one that can be cultivated. The personality trait most consistently linked to lucid dream frequency is openness to experience, one of the 5 major dimensions of personality studied in psychology. People who score high on openness tend to be curious, imaginative, attentive to their inner lives, and comfortable with novel and unusual experiences. Multiple studies across different populations and countries have found this association to be reliable. One possible explanation is that openness to experience naturally supports the kind of inner attention that makes lucid dreaming more likely. The willingness to notice the strangeness of a dream, to question it rather than simply accept it, to engage with the experience as an experience rather than simply living inside it. A mind that is curious about the nature of what it encounters, even in sleep, may be a mind that is simply more likely to ask the question. Neuroticism, a personality dimension associated with emotional variability, anxiety, and a tendency towards strong and changeable moods, has also been linked to lucid dream frequency. Though in a more nuanced way, some studies have found that higher neuroticism correlates with more frequent lucid dreams. This may be because a neurotic mind is more active, more monitoring, more likely to notice when something feels wrong, even inside a dream. Nightmares, which are more common in people with higher neuroticism, may also act as triggers for lucidity, with the distress of the dream provoking the self-awareness that recognizes it. Other research suggests the relationship is more complicated, with some aspects of neuroticism suppressing lucid dream frequency and others supporting it. This is an area where the evidence is not yet fully settled, and careful humility is appropriate. Agreeableness, the personality trait associated with warmth, social harmony, and a tendency to prioritize relationships with others, does not appear to correlate with lucid dreaming in either direction. People who are highly agreeable are neither more nor less likely to have lucid dreams than those who are not. This may suggest that lucid dreaming is not fundamentally a social or relational phenomenon. It is an inward one. It requires attention to one's own experience, one's own mind, one's own perception, social attunement, however valuable in waking life, does not seem to translate into the particular kind of self-monitoring that the dreaming mind needs to wake itself up. People who have lucid dreams more frequently also tend to perform better on certain cognitive tasks. One study found that frequent lucid dreamers outperformed non-lucid dreamers on the Stroop task, a test that measures the ability to manage competing pieces of information at the same time, to hold a correct response in mind while suppressing an incorrect but more automatic one. Another study found that lucid dreamers were more effective at identifying hidden shapes within complex figures, a measure of what psychologists call field independence, the ability to extract relevant information from a distracting background. These cognitive advantages do not explain lucid dreaming, but they suggest that lucid dreaming and certain waking cognitive capacities may share a common underlying resource, some feature of how attention is organized in the brain. The vestibular system, the inner ear's mechanism for sensing the body's position and movement in space, has an intriguing relationship with lucid dreaming. Researchers have noted that people with greater vestibular awareness tend to have more lucid dreams. Gymnasts, dancers, and those trained in activities that require a fine-grained sense of body position in space have been observed to lucid dream more frequently than the general population. The proposed connection is that the vestibular system contributes to the sense of self-location, the feeling of where you are and how you are positioned in the world. This sense of self-location may be one of the raw materials from which dream awareness is built. A body that knows exactly where it is in space may be a body whose mind is more able to locate itself inside a dream. Sleep architecture, the pattern and timing of how sleep stages unfold across the night. has an important influence on whether lucid dreams occur. Lucid dreams happen almost exclusively during REM sleep, the stage characterized by rapid eye movements, vivid mental activity, and temporary paralysis of the major voluntary muscles. REM sleep cycles become longer and more intense as the night progresses, with the longest and most active periods occurring in the hours just before natural waking. This means that the most fertile window for lucid dreams is typically in the early morning, after 5, 6, or 7 hours of sleep, when REM periods can last 30 to 45 minutes. People who are chronically sleep-deprived or who never have the opportunity to sleep through those later morning hours may simply be missing the physiological window when lucidity is most possible. Research examining sleep fragmentation and lucid dreaming found a nuanced picture. It is specifically the transition between wakefulness and REM sleep, rather than simply waking up frequently, that appears linked to higher lucid dream frequency. The boundary itself, not the interruption alone, seems to carry the possibility a brief moment of wakefulness before re-entering REM may bring a small portion of conscious awareness back online, which then carries into the next dream. This is the principle behind one of the most well-studied lucid dream induction techniques, the wake back to sleep method, in which a person sets an alarm for the early morning hours, stays awake briefly, and then returns to sleep. The transition seems to carry the possibility of awareness into the dream that follows. The neurotransmitter acetylcholine plays a central role in REM sleep and appears to be implicated in lucid dreaming. During REM, levels of acetylcholine rise significantly in the brain, driving the vivid, narrative quality of dreams. Galantamine, a drug that increases acetylcholine availability by slowing its breakdown, has been studied in randomized controlled trials as a lucid dream induction aid. A 2018 double-blind study led by Stephen LaBerge found that galantamine taken during a wake-back-to-sleep window produced substantially increased rates of lucid dreaming compared to placebo. This suggests that the neurochemical state of REM sleep, the precise balance of brain chemicals present during the dreaming mind, is one of the factors that determines whether awareness can cross the threshold. People whose REM chemistry naturally supports higher acetylcholine availability may be physiologically predisposed to experience more frequent lucidity. The default mode network, a set of brain regions that are active when the mind is at rest, reflecting on itself, imagining the future, or recalling the past, is also active during dreaming. Some researchers believe that the default mode network is, in a meaningful sense, the generator of dream content. It is the network associated with self-referential thought, with narrative, with the construction of mental models of the world. In lucid dreaming, this network appears to work in coordination with the prefrontal regions that support metacognition, creating what one researcher described as a collaboration between the narrative self and the observing self. People whose default mode networks are more strongly connected to frontal monitoring regions, even during ordinary wakefulness, may be more naturally equipped for the awareness that lucid dreaming requires. The boundary between waking and dreaming is not as sharp as it might appear. Psychologists who study individual differences in consciousness have described a spectrum of mental boundaries. The degree to which a person's inner world is separated from their outer experience, their fantasies from their perceptions, their sleeping mind from their waking one. People described as having thin boundaries tend to be more imaginative, more sensitive to their inner experience, more prone to vivid imagery, and also more likely to have experiences that cross ordinary categorical lines, including lucid dreams, sleep paralysis, and hypnagogic hallucinations. The thinness of this boundary is not a disorder. It is a feature of how certain minds are organized, and it may be one of the most fundamental individual differences that separates the frequent lucid dreamer from the person who simply dreams and forgets and wakes. Halfway through the first quarter of our journey, the shape of an answer is beginning to appear. Why do some people never have lucid dreams? Not because they lack imagination, not because they are less intelligent or less curious, but because the brain's internal observer, that quiet, watching part of the mind, varies across people in its strength, its connectivity, its neurochemical support, and its abid. The door to lucidity is real. The science of who finds it is only beginning, and the answer, it is slowly becoming clear, is written not in the stars, but in the brain, in the quiet, invisible wiring that makes each mind its own particular kind of darkness. Let us pause here for a moment. Every cell in your body knows how to sleep. This state you are entering has been repeated millions of times before you were born, in ancestors whose names are lost, in a lineage of bodies that found rest in the dark and woke again to light. You are doing the oldest thing a human body knows how to do. Notice the weight of your limbs. Notice the soft rhythm of your breathing. Your brain is sorting tonight, deciding what matters, what can be released, what to carry forward into morning. You do not need to do anything. It knows how. Now we continue. Reality testing is the practice of checking, during waking life, whether you are dreaming. The logic is simple. If you make a habit of asking the question while awake, the habit may eventually carry into sleep, where the same question might finally receive a different answer. Common reality tests include looking at your hands and noticing whether they look normal, checking a clock twice to see if the time changes in unexpected ways, or trying to push a finger through the palm of the other hand. In dreams, hands sometimes have extra fingers or strange proportions. Clocks are often unreadable or shift between glances. Matter, under the examining attention of the dreaming mind, does not always behave as it should. The practice of asking the question is, in itself, a form of cognitive training, teaching the mind to never fully accept what it perceives without at least a moment of gentle inquiry. The MILD technique, mnemonic induction of lucid dreams, was developed by Stephen LaBerge at Stanford University in the early 1980s and remains one of the most studied induction methods. It involves 3 components: waking briefly after a period of sleep, recalling the dream you just had, and then repeating a statement of intention as you return to sleep. Something like, "I will notice that I am dreaming." The word mnemonic refers to memory. The technique works by priming the sleeping mind to remember its intention at the moment a dream begins. LaBerge found that when combined with a wake-back-to-sleep schedule, the MILD technique produced lucid dreams in a significant portion of participants. A 2020 meta-analysis confirmed it as among the more effective of the widely studied induction methods. The intention, it seems, does not simply dissolve at the threshold of sleep. It waits. False awakenings are dreams in which you believe you have woken up, only to discover, sometimes after a prolonged time, that you are still dreaming. They are more common among lucid dreamers than in the general population and are often described as occurring in sequence, waking from a dream into what seems like the real world, only to later realize that second world was also a dream. Sleep researchers believe false awakenings may occur at moments when the brain is hovering at the boundary between REM sleep and waking. When the monitoring systems that distinguish between inner experience and outer reality are momentarily confused, they are a reminder that the mind's certainty about what is real is never as absolute as it feels in any given moment, and that the architecture of consciousness in sleep is far more flexible and strange than ordinary waking suggests. Sleep paralysis and lucid dreaming share a relationship that researchers are still carefully mapping. Sleep paralysis occurs when a person becomes aware during a REM period before the muscle atonia of that stage has lifted, resulting in a state of consciousness without the ability to move. It can be unsettling, particularly when accompanied by hypnagogic hallucinations, which are sensory experiences, often visual or auditory, generated by the still active dreaming brain. But some experienced lucid dreamers have learned to enter lucid dreams directly from a state of sleep paralysis, using the hallucinations as the raw material for a consciously directed dream. About 7.5% of the general population experience sleep paralysis at some point in their lives. Among frequent lucid dreamers, the percentage is considerably higher. The wild technique, wake-initiated lucid dreaming, involves maintaining consciousness continuously while the body falls asleep. The practitioner lies still, allows the body to relax into the early stages of sleep, and attempts to observe the hypnagogic imagery that appears, the fragmentary colors, shapes, and scenes that emerge at the threshold, without losing awareness. The challenge is considerable. The same processes that are designed to carry the conscious mind into sleep are working against the attempt to stay awake. Most practitioners report that it requires significant patience and practice, and that failure, simply falling asleep, is far more common than success. But for those who manage the crossing, the entry into a lucid dream is immediate and complete, beginning from the very first moment of sleep. Certain sleep positions may influence the likelihood of lucid dreaming, though the evidence here is more preliminary than some popular accounts suggest. Some research has found that sleeping on your back may increase the vividness of dreams and the likelihood of unusual sleep experiences, including lucid dreams and sleep paralysis. One proposed mechanism is that the supine position may slightly affect breathing and blood flow in ways that alter the quality of REM sleep. Other researchers suggest the effect is less direct, that sleeping on the back is simply a common position for those who are already lighter sleepers or who wake more frequently during the night, both of which are independently linked to lucid dream frequency. This remains an area where the science is interesting, but not yet conclusive. Nightmare frequency has a notable relationship with lucid dreaming. People who have more frequent nightmares tend to also report more frequent lucid dreams. One study from 2004 found a moderate correlation between the two. Some researchers believe this is because the emotional intensity of a nightmare, the vivid wrongness, the fear, the urgency, provides exactly the kind of signal that can jolt the sleeping mind into awareness. The dream becomes too much to simply accept, and the mind, in its distress, stumbles toward the recognition that this cannot be real. In this way, lucid dreaming may function for some people as a natural protective mechanism, a way of stepping back from a difficult experience while still remaining inside it. About 7% of lucid dreams are themselves nightmarish, a finding that suggests lucidity does not always bring control and that awareness inside a dream does not guarantee comfort. Targeted memory reactivation is a research technique in which sounds or scents associated with a particular memory or intention are played back to a person while they sleep. Originally developed as a tool for studying how the sleeping brain consolidates memories, it has recently been adapted as a method for increasing the likelihood of lucid dreams. In a series of studies, participants were trained to associate a specific cue, a sound, a phrase, with the intention to become lucid. When that cue was then played back during REM sleep, the rate of lucid dreaming increased compared to nights when no cue was used. This technique, sometimes called targeted lucidity reactivation, represents one of the more scientifically promising approaches to reliably inducing the lucid state, and it illuminates something interesting about the sleeping brain. It is not completely closed to the outside world. It listens in its own quiet way. Adolescents report lucid dreams more often than older adults in most survey-based studies. The decline in lucid dreaming across adulthood has been noted by multiple research groups and is robust enough to be considered a well-established finding, though its cause is not fully understood. Some researchers point to changes in sleep architecture. The proportion and quality of REM sleep shifts with age, becoming somewhat less in total and, in some studies, less vivid. Others point to changes in metacognitive habits. The adolescent mind is blank, in many ways, actively engaged in the project of self-construction, more occupied with questions of identity, more likely to be reflecting on its own experience. Whatever the cause, the decline appears to be real. Lucid dreaming, it seems, belongs especially to the young or to those who, through practice or temperament, have found a way to keep that particular window open. Keeping a dream journal, writing down whatever can be remembered from a dream upon waking, as soon as possible before the memory fades, is the most consistently recommended and practiced preparatory step for lucid dreaming. Dream memories are fragile. They exist in a form that is stored differently from ordinary waking memories, and they dissolve quickly without active rehearsal. People who journal their dreams over weeks and months report a gradual improvement in dream recall. More detail, more narrative, more frequency of remembering, and as recall improves, lucid dream frequency tends to follow. The journal is not itself the mechanism of lucidity, but it trains the mind to pay attention to its dreaming life, to treat it as something worth noticing, worth preserving, worth returning to, and that attention, over time, may be one of the most reliable paths toward the door. The experience of finding inconsistencies in a dream, moments when something simply does not fit the ordinary logic of the world, is called a dream sign. Most dreamers encounter these moments and pass through them without question. The flying that feels perfectly normal, the building that connects to a place it cannot connect to, the person who is simultaneously two different people. The mind in ordinary sleep is remarkably good at accepting the impossible. It fills in gaps, resolves contradictions, and moves forward without the kind of critical interrogation that waking life usually demands. Learning to notice dream signs and to allow them to prompt the question is one of the central skills that lucid dream training attempts to develop. It is, in essence, the cultivation of a habit that many minds simply never develop on their own. There is a concept in dream research called pre-lucid dreaming, a state in which the dreamer begins to notice something is unusual, but does not quite complete the recognition that they are dreaming. They might sense, "This is strange," or "Something is different here," without arriving at the fuller awareness. These pre-lucid moments are believed to be common, far more common than full lucidity. The gap between noticing something unusual and recognizing the dream as a dream may be the most important and least understood step in the process. Why does one person's mind complete that crossing, while another's lets the strange detail dissolve back into the dream? The answer may lie in the strength and connectivity of the prefrontal monitoring regions. The degree to which the self-observing function of the mind has enough activation to carry the thought forward to its conclusion. The experience of lucidity in a dream tends to be brief. Studies have found that most laboratory-verified lucid dreams last between 2 and 5 minutes, though dreamers sometimes report subjectively longer periods. Maintaining the lucid state is itself a skill, requiring the dreamer to remain aware without either becoming too activated and waking up, or losing focus and sliding back into a regular dream. Techniques for maintaining lucidity typically involve directing attention to sensory details within the dream, touching surfaces, looking at objects closely, rubbing the hands together. These actions seem to stabilize the brain activity that underlies the lucid state, preventing the slippage back into ordinary dreaming. Even for practiced lucid dreamers, the management of the state is an ongoing and delicate task. Awareness, in sleep, does not keep itself. The clinical potential of lucid dreaming has gained considerable scientific attention. A 2024 review summarized growing evidence that lucid dreaming therapy, teaching people with recurrent nightmares to become lucid within those nightmares and consciously alter their direction, can reduce nightmare frequency and associated distress. In a study of narcoleptic patients, up to 70% reported that lucid awareness within nightmares provided relief. The technique is similar in principle to imagery rehearsal therapy, a well-established treatment for chronic nightmares, but occurs inside the dream itself rather than as a waking rehearsal. A 2024 study also found that intentional waking, using lucidity to exit a nightmare by waking oneself, may be another useful tool, though researchers note that waking during the night carries its own sleep disruption costs. A 2024 study, published in the journal Traumatology, found meaningful reductions in post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms in participants who completed a lucid dreaming workshop. The researchers cautioned that the sample was small and the study preliminary, but the signal was notable enough to prompt further investigation. The idea that the dreaming mind, made conscious, could be directed toward healing is not new. It appears in various forms, across cultures, and across centuries of human experience. What is new is the attempt to study it with the tools of modern sleep science, to measure what changes in the brain and in the symptom profile when awareness enters the dream. Whether lucid dreaming will eventually take its place alongside established therapies remains to be seen. But the conversation is underway. you are still here with me, still somewhere between thinking and resting, still following these quiet corridors of the dreaming mind. Take one slow breath. Your brain is doing exactly what it was built to do tonight. Sorting, releasing, preparing for the deep work of sleep. We will keep going together, gently, into the second half of what dreams are, and why they move through some minds and not others. The relationship between lucid dreaming and creativity has been studied from several angles. Lucid dreamers report using the dream state for creative problem-solving, artistic inspiration, and the exploration of ideas in a context where the ordinary limitations of possibility do not apply. Survey data suggests that many practicing artists, musicians, and writers have experimented with lucid dreaming as a creative tool. Some studies have found that people who engage regularly in imaginative and creative activities during waking life, reading fiction, making music, visual art, storytelling, report more vivid dreams and higher dream recall, which are themselves associated with increased lucidity. The creative mind may be particularly well suited to lucid dreaming, not because creativity is magical, but because it exercises the same capacity for flexible, internally generated imagery that dreaming itself depends on. Rehearsing a physical skill inside a lucid dream has been shown, in a small but intriguing body of research, to produce improvements in waking performance. A study asked lucid dreamers to practice a coin toss task inside their dreams and found measurable gains in accuracy compared to a control group. Dart throwing, finger tapping sequences, and various motor skills have been similarly studied with modest positive results. The mechanism appears to involve the motor cortex, the brain region that coordinates movement, which shows activation during dreaming as well as during actual movement. A dream rehearsal, even without any physical motion, may train the brain's movement systems in a way that partially transfers to waking performance. This finding is offered cautiously. The effect sizes are small. The studies involve few participants, and replication is still needed. Some researchers have drawn careful parallels between the phenomenology of lucid dreaming and certain states produced by psychedelic substances. Both involve a loosening of ordinary perceptual boundaries, an intensification of imagery, a shift in the relationship between the experiencing self and the experienced world. Both have been associated with what researchers call ego attenuation, a reduction in the sharp distinction between self and environment that characterizes ordinary waking consciousness. A 2025 study explored this connection through a virtual reality experiment designed to promote ego-transcendent experiences in lucid dreamers. Whether this parallel is more than phenomenological, whether the underlying brain mechanisms overlap in meaningful ways, is a question that researchers are actively pursuing. These connections are interesting, but should be held gently, as the science here is young. Tibetan dream yoga is an ancient practice within Vajrayana Buddhism that involves deliberately cultivating awareness during dreams as a spiritual discipline. Practitioners work over years to develop the capacity to remain continuously conscious through the entire sleep period, not just during REM, but through all stages of sleep, including the deep and dreamless states. Recent scientific investigations have begun to study experienced practitioners using overnight EEG recordings and detailed phenomenological interviews. Preliminary findings suggest that long-term dream yoga practitioners show distinctive patterns of neural activity during sleep and report experiences that are qualitatively different from ordinary lucid dreams, sometimes describing a kind of awareness that persists through the dreamless depths of sleep. This research is in its early stages, but it opens a window onto what the dreaming mind may be capable of, with sufficient time and practice and intention. The question of whether lucid dreaming can be induced externally through sensory stimulation applied during sleep has been explored for decades. Researchers have experimented with light pulses, auditory tones, mild electrical stimulation, and vibrations delivered to sleeping participants during verified REM periods. The results have been mixed. Some studies report meaningful increases in lucidity following external stimulation. Others find modest or no effects. The challenge is that the stimulation must be strong enough to reach into the dream without being strong enough to simply wake the dreamer. That threshold is narrow and varies considerably between individuals. The most promising recent approaches combine external cues with pre-sleep cognitive training, essentially teaching the brain to recognize and respond to a specific signal in sleep, rather than simply delivering the signal and hoping for a response. Why do some minds never cross the threshold into lucidity, even after years of trying this? Perhaps the most intimate version of the video's central question. The honest answer is that science does not yet know with certainty. What it does know is that the capacity for lucid dreaming is not binary. It is not simply present or absent. It appears to exist on a continuum, shaped by brain structure, neurochemistry, personality, sleep habits, practice, and factors that researchers have not yet identified. Some people have simply never been close to the threshold. Others have been close many times and not quite reached it. And others, with no particular effort, walk through it regularly. The distribution is not fair, and it is not fully understood. But the evidence suggests that most people who never have lucid dreams are not incapable. They are simply, in the language of sleep science, further from the door. The eyes of a lucid dreamer, moving purposefully inside a dream, became something that researchers had not expected to ever witness. A clear signal, sent from the other side of sleep. For centuries, the dreaming state was considered, almost by definition, a state without true awareness, a passive experience that simply happens to the sleeping mind. The eye signals sent by Alan Worsley in 1975 and replicated by Stephen LaBerge and others in subsequent decades demonstrated that something was present inside the dream, something capable of remembering an intention formed before sleep, recognizing the moment had come, and acting on it. That something was awareness, and the evidence of it was written in the movement of the eyes. A 2021 study led by Karen Conkerly and Ken Palla at Northwestern University demonstrated bidirectional communication with lucid dreamers during sleep. Participants in REM sleep who were lucid were able not only to signal outward with eye movements, but also to receive and respond to simple questions asked by researchers in the room. They answered math problems. They indicated whether a story element was pleasing or not. The answers were not always correct, and the communication was limited and imperfect. But the demonstration changed the field. A dreaming mind had held a conversation with the waking world. The border between the two, already blurry in sleep science, had become blurrier still. The absence of lucid dreams in a person's life does not indicate an absence of dreaming. Research consistently confirms that virtually all people dream during REM sleep, including people who believe they never dream. Non-dreamers, it turns out, are more accurately described as non-recallers, people whose dream memories dissolve in the transition to waking before they can be captured and held. The depth of sleep, the architecture of each night, and subtle differences in the timing of awakening all determine whether any trace of a dream survives into the waking morning. People who never recall their dreams may be having rich, complex, emotionally vivid dream lives that simply leave no trace. The absence of memory is not the absence of experience. It is only the absence of the bridge between one and the other. Halfway through this journey, the answer to the central question is beginning to take a shape that feels more like a landscape than a fence. Why some people never have lucid dreams is not a question with a single answer. It is a question that opens onto the full complexity of how the sleeping mind works, how awareness is built, where it retreats during sleep, what allows it to occasionally surface, and what keeps it submerged. The research is careful, the findings are interesting, and the door is real. And whether or not you have ever walked through it, the fact that you are listening to this, that some part of you, in the stillness of tonight, is still quietly wondering, may itself be a small signal that the watching part of your mind has never fully gone to sleep. The memory you believe most strongly is actually reconstructed each time you recall it. Your brain does not store memories like photographs. It stores them like recipes, a set of instructions for reconstruction. Each time you remember something, you rebuild it slightly differently. Right now, your brain is rewriting itself. Tonight is part of that draft. Let that land quietly for a moment. The mind you will wake up with tomorrow morning will be, in the gentlest sense, slightly different from the one you carried into sleep tonight. Rest is not a pause from who you are. It is part of how you become. Now we continue the journey. The precuneus, that region in the upper rear of the brain where gamma activity surges at the moment of lucidity, is also one of the most active regions during ordinary waking self-reflection. It is part of the default mode network, the brain's resting state system for self-referential processing. When you daydream, when you imagine yourself in a future scenario, when you recall a personal memory, the precuneus is active. Its activation during lucid dreaming may represent the entry of ordinary self-awareness into a space from which it is usually excluded. The dreaming mind briefly becomes, in this region, more like the waking mind, not in all respects, but in one quiet and crucial one, the temporoparietal junction, which appeared earlier in our journey as a node in the network of lucid dream awareness, is also the region most associated with out-of-body experiences. Electrical stimulation of this area in conscious patients during neurosurgery has produced immediate out-of-body sensations. The feeling of floating above the body, of seeing oneself from a perspective outside the physical self. Sleep researchers have explored the relationship between lucid dreaming, out-of-body experiences, and false awakenings, finding that all three tend to co-occur more frequently in the same individuals. They may share a common neural substrate, a mechanism in the temporoparietal junction that normally anchors the self to the body, and that, under certain conditions of sleep, becomes momentarily unmoored. The quality of REM sleep, not just its presence, but its depth and vividness, varies considerably between individuals and changes with age. Health, sleep regularity, and alcohol consumption. Alcohol, in particular, is known to suppress REM sleep in the early part of the night and produce a rebound of intensified, sometimes disturbing REM in the later hours. People who drink regularly before sleep often report disrupted, fragmented dreaming or a near-total inability to recall dreams. Since dream recall is itself one of the gateways toward lucidity, habitual alcohol use before sleep may be one of the most common and least recognized factors that closes the door to the lucid state. The absence of lucid dreaming is not always about brain wiring or personality. Sometimes it is a matter of the conditions given to sleep. Stress and anxiety have a complex relationship with dreaming and lucid dreaming. Moderate levels of psychological stress appear to increase dream vividness and emotional intensity, which can support the kind of heightened awareness that lucidity requires. But high, sustained stress disrupts sleep architecture, reduces the quality of REM, and fragments the night in ways that undermine both dream recall and the depth of engagement needed for lucid dreaming to emerge. The anxious mind may have the sensitivity that lucid dreaming requires, but the disrupted sleep that prevents it. This tension between the characteristics that make a person more likely to be a lucid dreamer and the lifestyle conditions that prevent it is one of the more quietly notable findings in the field. The light sleeper and the heavy sleeper represent two ends of a spectrum of arousal threshold. The amount of stimulation required to wake a person from sleep. Light sleepers wake more frequently during the night, experience more transitions between sleep stages, and are more likely to retain fragments of their dreams. Heavy sleepers, who remain deeply asleep through more of the night, may experience REM periods that are subjectively richer and more stable, but they may also be less likely to bring any awareness back from them. The question is not simply which is better for lucid dreaming. Both types of sleeper face different challenges. The light sleeper may wake too easily. The heavy sleeper may never create the transition that allows awareness to slip through the body's circadian rhythm, the 24-hour internal clock that governs the timing of sleep and waking, also influences the timing and quality of REM sleep. People who follow regular sleep schedules and who sleep in alignment with their natural circadian phase tend to have more consistent and robust REM periods. People who work irregular hours, shift workers, frequent travelers crossing time zones, and those whose sleep times vary widely from night to night may experience disrupted REM and reduced dream recall. As a consequence, the lucid dream, which depends on a particular quality of REM that is more likely at specific points in the sleep cycle, may be less accessible to a mind that never quite knows when morning is coming. Research published in 2024 found that frequent lucid dreaming is associated with specific styles of meditation practice. People who practiced open monitoring meditation, a form that involves broadly attending to whatever arises in awareness without directing attention to any specific object, reported higher lucid dream frequency than people who practiced focused attention meditation, in which the mind is directed to a single point, such as the breath. This distinction is worth sitting with. Open monitoring is specifically a practice of noticing what is present in awareness, of attending to the field of experience rather than any particular content within it. lucid dreaming requires exactly this: the ability to hold awareness of the dream as a whole, rather than being absorbed in any particular element of it. The kind of attention that lucid dreaming needs may be a kind that can be specifically cultivated. The dreaming mind is not without logic. It has its own version of cause and effect, its own rules, its own narrative structure. Dreams are not chaos. They are stories, sometimes strange stories, often emotionally charged, occasionally beautiful, generated by the sleeping brain from the materials of memory, emotion, and expectation. Researchers studying dream content have found that dreams tend to reflect the concerns, préoccupations, and emotional themes of waking life, in a form that is often metaphorical and associative rather than literal. The brain does not generate randomness. It generates meaning. But it generates meaning with different rules than waking life applies. Learning to notice the difference between the two sets of rules, the dream rules and the waking rules, is, in some sense, what lucid dreaming requires. False awakenings are windows into the brain's mechanisms for distinguishing between internal experience and external reality. In a false awakening, the brain is running a very convincing simulation of waking up, one so complete that the person believes it is real, gets out of bed, perhaps goes about a morning routine, before noticing something that does not fit. The brain's reality testing mechanisms, those functions associated with the prefrontal cortex and the temporoparietal junction, have accepted the simulation as reality. The frequency of false awakenings among lucid dreamers may reflect the fact that those dreamers are operating close to the border of wakefulness, close enough that the boundary becomes permeable in multiple directions. Dreaming has been proposed as a form of threat simulation, an evolutionary mechanism by which the sleeping brain rehearses potentially difficult scenarios in a context where no real harm can occur. The threat simulation theory suggests that the vividness and emotional intensity of challenging dreams serves the function of training threat-related behaviors and emotional responses. Lucid dreaming, in this framework, represents a further elaboration of this capacity, not just simulating difficulties, but being able to evaluate and respond to the simulation from a position of knowing it is a simulation. Whether this is the evolutionary purpose of lucid dreaming, or simply one of its incidental capacities, is a matter of ongoing debate. What is clear is that the dreaming brain is not simply resting, it is working, and awareness, when it enters that work, changes it. People who frequently play immersive video games, spending hours within environments that have their own internal logic, their own physics, their own rules, tend to report more frequent lucid dreams. The proposed parallel is structural rather than causal. Gaming trains a dual perspective, full immersion in an experience that is acknowledged simultaneously as a constructed environment. The player is inside the world and outside it at the same time. This is a close analog to the lucid dreamer's position. Whether gaming directly causes more frequent lucidity or simply attracts people who already have a particular cognitive style is unclear. But the connection, observed across multiple research groups, is consistent enough to suggest that the way a waking mind engages with internally generated realities may shape what it does with sleep-generated ones. Some researchers have begun to describe lucid dreaming as a learnable skill rather than a fixed capacity. This reframing is worth resting with. If lucid dreaming were entirely determined by brain structure or neurochemistry, the prospects for those who had never experienced it would be limited. But if it is a skill, a set of mental habits and attentional capacities that can be developed through practice, then the absence of lucid dreaming is not a door that is permanently closed. It is simply a door that has not yet been opened. This does not mean that everyone who tries will succeed, or that the skill will come equally easily to all. The research on induction techniques consistently shows wide individual variability in response, but the baseline assumption that lucid dreaming is possible for more people than naturally experience it is now one of the driving principles of the field. The question of whether animals have lucid dreams is one that science cannot yet answer with confidence. We know that many mammals experience REM sleep and show behavioral signs during REM that suggest dreaming: the twitching of a dog's paws, the eye movements of a sleeping bird. Some researchers have proposed that the neural correlates of dreaming are ancient and widely shared. But whether any non-human animal has the metacognitive capacity to recognize a dream as a dream, to become aware within it, is unknown. The question touches on deeper uncertainties about the nature of self-awareness in non-human minds. For now, the lucid dream remains, as far as we know, a distinctly human territory, a place where the human mind's particular capacity for self-reflection encounters the strangeness of its own sleep. The experience of becoming lucid inside a dream has been described in different ways across different cultures and different centuries. Ancient Greek philosophers wrote of dreams in which they became aware of the dreaming. Medieval Christian mystics described states of conscious prayer maintained through sleep. Sufi poets wrote of dreaming as a veil that could, in certain moments, become transparent. Indigenous traditions across multiple continents have practices that involve cultivating awareness in the sleep state as part of spiritual development. The convergence of these experiences across cultures and across history suggests that the capacity for lucid dreaming is genuinely human, old, widespread, and recognized long before it could be measured in a laboratory. What is new is not the experience. What is new is the attempt to understand it. We now understand something that was not clearly established a generation ago. The brain during a lucid dream is in a state that is distinct from both waking and ordinary REM sleep. It is neither asleep nor awake in the ordinary sense. It is a third thing, a state that the science is still finding language for. Awareness is present. The body is at rest. The imagery is internally generated. The self is watching. This combination of features does not exist in ordinary waking life and does not exist in ordinary sleep. It is its own territory, and the question of who has access to it, who finds the door, who finds it open, who knows it is there, is a question about the architecture of consciousness itself. Some people report that their lucid dreams began after a period of significant life change. Illness, loss, a long period of stress followed by recovery. The precipitating event varies, but the pattern appears in enough personal accounts that researchers have noted it. One interpretation is that these life events changed sleep patterns in ways that created the conditions for lucidity, disrupted REM, more frequent night awakenings, a heightened emotional engagement with inner experience. Another interpretation is that periods of transition naturally increase self-reflection. the mind becomes more attentive to itself, more willing to question its own experience. Both may be true. The lucid dream, in these accounts, often feels like a gift that arrived unexpectedly from a difficult season. The stability of a lucid dream once entered depends significantly on the dreamer's experience and technique. Novice lucid dreamers often report that the state is brief and fragile. A rush of recognition disrupts it within seconds, and the dream either ends in a false awakening or dissolves back into ordinary sleep. More experienced lucid dreamers learn to manage their emotional and attentional states within the dream, using stabilization techniques to extend and deepen the experience. This learning curve is well documented in first-person accounts and in structured research. Lucid dreaming, like many complex cognitive skills, develops with practice, and the skills involved, managing attention, modulating arousal, maintaining dual awareness, are not trivial. They are, in a sense, some of the more refined things a mind can do. Recent research has explored whether lucid dreaming frequency is heritable, whether there is a genetic component to who naturally has lucid dreams. Twin studies suggest that there is a modest genetic contribution to dream recall frequency, which is itself linked to lucid dreaming. But the heritability estimates are not high, and environmental factors, sleep habits, stress levels, meditation practice, and the simple circumstance of whether a person ever encountered the idea of lucid dreaming and began to pay attention to their dreams, account for substantial variation. The question of whether you are the kind of person who has lucid dreams is not settled by your genetics. It is shaped by them, and also by everything else. The feeling that some people describe of almost having a lucid dream, of being close, of a dream that felt somehow more vivid than usual, of waking with the sense that something had nearly happened, may be more informative than it first appears. These near-lucid experiences suggest that the threshold has been approached. The neurological conditions were close to sufficient. The gap was narrow. For many people who feel that lucid dreaming is inaccessible to them, the closeness of those near-lucid moments may be the most important data available. It suggests not an absence of capacity, but a gap between current capacity and threshold, a gap that, for many minds, can quietly narrow. The role of intention in lucid dreaming is, itself, one of the more gently interesting aspects of the phenomenon. Before sleep, an intention is formed. I will recognize that I am dreaming. During sleep, that intention, carried in the form of memory, of primed neural pathways, of a question left hanging in the dark, may survive the transition into the dream and resurface at the right moment. The mind, in this view, is not entirely passive during sleep. It carries something forward. The intention crosses the border, not as a thought, but as a shape, a readiness, a priming, a disposition to notice. Understanding how intentions survive the passage into sleep, and what happens to them there, may be one of the most important unanswered questions in the science of the sleeping mind. For people who have had even one lucid dream, even a brief, partial, accidental moment of recognition inside a dream, the experience tends to be described as memorable in a way that ordinary dreams are not. Something about the quality of awareness in that moment, the sense of being fully present inside an experience that is entirely internally generated, leaves a trace that waking memories rarely do. Researchers studying the phenomenology of lucid dreams note this quality of vividness and presence consistently. The memory of a lucid dream, for those who have had one, is often among the clearest and most vivid sleep memories in a person's life. This quality of presence may itself be a signal of what the mind is capable of and what becomes possible when awareness does not sleep. The default mode network, the brain's resting state system, generates the narrative content of dreams. It also generates the wandering thoughts of a quiet afternoon, the remembered conversations of childhood, the imagined futures of a hopeful evening. The dreaming mind and the daydreaming mind use the same substrate. What differs is the context. In sleep, the inputs from the outside world are suppressed, and the internal generation of experience runs without the corrective feedback of reality. The question of who becomes lucid may partly be a question of who, even while awake, pays attention to the machinery of their own imagination, who notices the dreaming while awake that happens in the quietest moments of any ordinary day. Some researchers have suggested that certain sleep conditions may affect the likelihood of lucid dreaming in specific ways. Narcolepsy, a neurological condition in which the boundaries between wakefulness and REM sleep are poorly maintained, is associated with unusually high rates of lucid dreaming. People with narcolepsy may enter REM sleep directly from wakefulness, without the usual transition through lighter sleep stages. And this direct entry appears to increase the likelihood of maintaining conscious awareness into the dream. The narcoleptic brain, in this sense, is performing an extreme version of what the wild technique attempts to replicate deliberately: the blurring of waking and sleeping. In this particular way, makes the lucid dream a more frequent visitor. The question of what a lucid dreamer actually does with the awareness once it arrives varies considerably. Some simply observe. The clarity of being conscious inside a dream is enough, and the dreamer moves through the experience with the quality of a witness rather than a director. Others attempt to direct the content of the dream, to fly, to visit an imagined place, to confront a dream character with a question. Some use the space for creative exploration, for emotional processing, for the rehearsal of a skill or a conversation, and some, in the tradition of contemplative practice, attempt to remain in the lucid state without any particular goal, simply present, simply aware, inside the dark. What the lucid dream is for, each person may discover on their own. The central question asked at the beginning of tonight's journey, why do some people never have lucid dreams, has been a partial and honest answer. Some minds are architecturally closer to the door. Their prefrontal regions are more active during REM. Their metacognitive habits are stronger. Their dream recall more reliable. Their sleep more conducive to the long early morning REM periods, where lucidity most often lives. Some are neurochemically positioned differently, with cholinergic systems that support the right kind of REM. Some have practiced, in meditation or in life, the kind of attention that lucid dreaming requires. And some, perhaps, have simply never thought to look. The door has always been there. The science is only beginning to draw its map. Sleep does not come when you try to sleep. It comes when you stop trying. This is exactly that moment. Notice how the effort to follow these words is softening, Notice how the space between thoughts is widening. You are not failing at wakefulness. You are succeeding at something else. The mind that has been listening, questioning, following, it is ready now to let go of all three. Let go. The dreaming mind is always telling a story. Even in its strangest and most fragmentary forms, the dream has the quality of narrative, of something unfolding, of a self moving through a sequence of events with some sense of direction. However obscure, the story does not explain itself. It simply continues, and the lucid dreamer enters that story not as a character who does not know it is a story, but as a reader who has suddenly become aware of the page. Some people report that their most meaningful lucid dreams have not involved control at all. They have involved simply being fully present inside an experience that the mind itself created, watching it with a kind of wonder that is not available in ordinary dreams. The lucid dream, for these dreamers, is less a stage on which to act than a mirror in which to see. What the mirror shows depends entirely on who is looking. The brain's ability to generate a complete and convincing world from nothing but its own stored experience, without any input from outside, is one of the more quietly remarkable things that biology has ever produced. The dream is made from memory, from emotion, from the residue of a life. It assembles itself from fragments, arranges them into something coherent enough to inhabit, and presents the result as reality. The dreaming brain is, in its own way, one of the most generative things that any known living system has ever quietly done. Research suggests that emotional processing is one of the primary functions of REM sleep and dreaming. The sleeping brain appears to replay emotional memories in a context that is neurochemically different from waking, with lower levels of the stress hormone norepinephrine, allowing the emotional charge of difficult experiences to be processed without the full weight of the original distress. Lucid dreaming may offer an additional layer of this processing. The ability to engage consciously with emotionally charged content in the dream, to face what is difficult, to meet what is painful, with the knowledge that the experience, though vivid, cannot truly harm. The moment just before lucidity, when something in the dream begins to feel unusual, when a question forms but has not yet been asked, is perhaps the most gently intriguing moment in all of dream science. It is the threshold, the bridge between the dreaming self and the dreaming aware self. Most people, in most dreams, pass through that moment without crossing. The question forms and dissolves. The unusual thing is accepted. The dream moves on. What happens in the brain at that precise moment? Why some minds cross and others do not, is the question that defines the entire field. The clarity of waking life and the clarity of the lucid dream have been described by some dreamers as experientially similar. In both, awareness is present, attention can be directed, and the self feels coherent and grounded. What differs is the substrate. In the waking state, perception is anchored by the body and the external world. In the lucid dream, it is anchored by nothing except the awareness itself, and that distinction, a self aware of itself, held up by nothing but its own knowing, is one of the more quietly profound things that human consciousness can experience. People who have never had a lucid dream are not dreaming less than those who do. They are not less imaginative. not less aware, not sleeping more poorly in any fundamental sense. They are simply not crossing a particular threshold that most people never cross. The threshold is real. The distance to it varies. And the majority of human beings pass the whole of their dreaming lives within reach of it, without ever quite arriving. The precuneus, where gamma activity rises at the moment of lucidity, is also active during the experience of imagining yourself in a future situation, placing yourself mentally somewhere you are not. This function, projecting the self forward in time, imagining a scenario that has not yet occurred, is one of the more distinctive capacities of the human mind. Lucid dreaming may use this same capacity in an unusual direction, not projecting the self into an imagined future, but recognizing the self within an imagined present. The machinery is similar. The direction is gently, quietly different. The boundary between a lucid dream and waking is sometimes blurry in another direction. Some lucid dreamers report waking from a lucid dream and being uncertain, briefly, whether they are truly awake. The features of the lucid dream, the vividness, the self-awareness, the sense of presence, they are so similar to waking experience that the transition back can feel ambiguous. This blurriness is not a cause for concern. It is simply a reflection of how close the two states can come to each other in the right conditions. The mind that has experienced both knows that the line between them is drawn, but not always where it appears to be. The question of what it feels like to become aware inside a dream is not something that language handles easily. Dreamers who have had the experience often reach for the same kinds of words: clarity, expansion, a sudden sharpening of everything. The world of the dream remains the same, but the quality of being in it changes entirely. It is as if the dream and the self within the dream have both become more present, more fully inhabited. In the same moment, this quality of presence is, perhaps, the most persuasive evidence that something genuinely interesting is happening inside the sleeping brain. Awareness, in the study of the mind, is not a simple thing. It is not a switch that is either on or off. It is a gradient, a spectrum, a quality that exists in different degrees and different forms in different states of consciousness. Waking awareness differs from dreaming. Awareness differs from meditative. Awareness differs from the quiet awareness of a body that is fully at rest. Lucid dreaming occupies a particular position on this spectrum, one that has been rarely studied, difficult to induce, and impossible to predict. But its existence, verified now by decades of eye signal data and brain imaging and conversations held across the border of consciousness, proves that the spectrum is wider than ordinary experience suggests. Some of the most consistent reports from lucid dreamers involve an emotion that is difficult to name, something between wonder and peace, between awe and familiarity. The experience of being consciously inside a dream does not typically produce the emotional intensity of waking recognition. It produces something quieter, a noticing, as if the dreaming mind, made aware of itself, finds itself more at home than it expected. What that says about the nature of awareness, about where it lives, and what it is like when it stops performing and simply is something that science has only begun to ask. The people who never have lucid dreams are not, in any meaningful sense, missing something they were supposed to have. The dream, lucid or not, is its own complete experience. The ordinary dream, the one that passes without awareness, that tells its story to a self who believes it completely, that leaves, in the morning, only a fragment or a feeling, is itself a kind of gift. A mind that has wandered through that country, even without knowing it was wandering, has traveled somewhere real. Researchers have described the lucid dream as a natural space for the study of consciousness. In no other state does the human mind become simultaneously the one observing and the one observed, watching its own generated reality from inside it. The questions that lucid dreaming can help answer about the neural basis of self-awareness, about the boundary between waking and sleeping, about the relationship between intention and experience, are questions at the very center of what it means to have a mind at all. So why do some people never have lucid dreams? By now, the answer feels less like a single thing and more like a constellation of things. Brain connectivity, neurochemistry, personality and metacognitive habit, dream recall and sleep architecture, practice and intention, and the particular quality of attention a life has trained. No single factor determines the outcome. No single absence explains the gap. The door to lucidity is shaped by all of these things, and it stands differently for each person. The science is honest about this, and that honesty is itself a kind of comfort. The lucid dream has been used in research as a window onto the mind's capacity for self-representation, the ability to construct and inhabit a model of the self during a lucid dream. This model is running without external input, and yet it feels entirely real to the dreamer. This suggests that the experience of being a self, the sense of being someone, located somewhere, perceiving something, is a construction of the brain rather than a direct readout of reality. Lucid dreaming makes this visible in an unusually clear way. The self inside the dream is not a diminished version of the waking self. It is the same construction, running on a different stage. The question of whether the lucid dream is more or less real than waking life is one that sleep researchers tend to leave to philosophers. What they can say is that the brain's processing of a lucid dream shares important features with its processing of waking experience. The visual cortex is active. The motor cortex responds to imagined movements. The emotional regions process the content of the dream with genuine emotional weight. The experience is not real in the sense that the external world produces it, but it is real in the sense that the brain treats it with the same care it brings to everything else. There is a kind of dreamer who has never had a lucid dream, but who has spent their life in close and careful relationship with their dreaming, journaling, noticing, returning to the images that the night left behind. For this dreamer, the dream is already a territory of meaning. Even without the additional layer of awareness, the line between the lucid dreamer and the attentive non-lucid dreamer may be less a difference in the richness of the inner life and more a difference in where the threshold falls. And whether it has been crossed, both minds are, in their own way, awake to the dark. The dream journal, kept over weeks and months, does something that cannot be measured easily, but is consistently reported. It changes the dreamer's relationship to their own night, not by adding lucidity directly, but by turning the sleeping life into something worth returning to, something noticed, something tended. People who journal their dreams over time describe a slow shift in how they experience sleep itself, less as a gap between days and more as a place they visit regularly, with growing familiarity, that, tending, over time, is its own kind of waking up. The science of lucid dreaming is, in its current state, a young science discovering an old experience. What it has established is enough to say this is real. It is measurable. It is variable. And it is connected to fundamental features of how the sleeping mind maintains and loses awareness of itself. What it has not established, and what it is actively working toward, is a complete understanding of why the door stands where it does for any particular person, and what it would take to move it. The work continues. The questions remain open, and the mind that is asking them tonight is itself, in some small and quiet way, already part of the answer. Tonight you have traveled through the architecture of a sleeping mind. You have visited the prefrontal cortex, where the observer lives, the precuneus, where the self-image forms, the temporoparietal junction, where the body meets the world. You have followed the neuroscience of wakefulness, inside sleep, through 5 decades of eye signals and brain scans and conversations held across the border of consciousness. Whether or not you have ever had a lucid dream, the mind that followed this journey is one that watches itself, and that, watching, quiet and persistent, is not so very different from the thing the lucid dreamer finds. The person who has never had a lucid dream may be standing exactly where many lucid dreamers once stood, before the first crossing, before the first recognition, before the door swung open on the quiet dark of a sleeping mind that suddenly knew itself. That first moment cannot be predicted or scheduled, but it can be prepared for, and the preparation is the same as the thing itself, attention, turned gently inward, held without forcing, offered to the night. Dreams are the mind's own country, a territory where the ordinary rules of reality bend, where memory and emotion and imagination blend into something that feels, from inside, like the world. Every person who sleeps has spent years in that country, walking through its landscapes, meeting its inhabitants, following its logic without question. The lucid dreamer is simply someone who, in the middle of that country, once looked up and asked, "Wait, where am I?" And the answer, when it came, changed the dream entirely. The question that opened tonight, why some minds never cross the threshold into the lucid dream, has led, as the best questions do, not to a single answer, but to a more textured understanding of what the sleeping mind is. It is not a passive system switched off for the night. It is an active, narrative-generating, emotionally processing, self-representing system that maintains its own kind of consciousness, a consciousness that is, under certain conditions, close enough to waking awareness that the two can briefly touch. That touching, when it happens, is one of the quieter things that biology occasionally produces. The real change that the science of lucid dreaming offers is not a technique or a protocol. It is a way of understanding the night. The dark hours of sleep are not a gap in experience. They are experience, enriched, strange, internally generated, emotionally alive experience, passing largely unwitnessed by the self that lives inside the waking day. Whether that experience ever becomes lucid Whether the watching part of the mind ever steps forward inside the dream and says, "I see you. I know what you are." That is a question each sleeping mind answers in its own way, on its own time, in the particular dark it was given. And whatever the answer turns out to be, the question itself was worth asking. Tonight, you asked it. That is enough. And so this quiet journey through the science of the lucid dream comes gently to a close. We began at the prefrontal cortex, that watching region just behind the forehead, and traced the arc of what happens when it stays lit during sleep. We followed the eye signals of Alan Worsley in 1975, the first human being to send a verified message from inside a dream to a researcher in the waking world. We arrived at the 2025 findings from Radboud University, where the largest EEG dataset of lucid dreaming ever assembled showed a burst of gamma activity in the precuneus, the self-imaging region of the brain, at the exact moment a sleeping mind wakes inside its own dark. From there, we traveled through personality and practice, through the metabolism of REM, through the fragile threshold that some minds cross and most do not. What made you curious tonight about this, about your own dreaming mind, is itself a small signal. The door is never as far as it appears. Lucid dreaming reminds us that awareness is not a binary. It is a quality that flows through sleep and waking in degrees, pooling here and receding there, drawing back from the light, and sometimes, briefly, gently, surfacing inside the dark. Much of the mind's deepest work happens in silence, in the hours we give to sleep, in the dreaming that passes without witness. By pausing to notice, even tonight, we have glimpsed something tender in what is most ordinary and most overlooked. The night, it turns out, is never quite as empty as it seems. In these final minutes, take the deepest breath you can, as deep as possible. Think about the awareness that has been present through this entire night, through every fact, every meditation, every breath between words. That awareness was never absent. It was always here, watching quietly, without effort, without announcement. You are not separate from that awareness. You are it. Let your entire being dissolve into the space where waking and sleeping are not yet different, where the mind is still and present, without needing to be either dreaming or awake. Prepare for deep sleep. No boundaries left, only peace. If this gentle journey through the science of lucid dreaming helped you feel curious, peaceful, or simply less alone in the company of your own sleeping mind, a soft like or subscribe could carry this space toward one more person lying awake tonight, wondering, as you once did, what their dreams might hold if they learned to watch. One quiet night, one wondering mind at a time. Whatever you have been turning over today, those half-formed questions, those moments you keep returning to, you do not need to carry them into sleep. They will still be there in the morning. Tonight, you belong only to yourself. You have traveled inward tonight. Through corridors, most people never pause to notice. You touched the architecture of what awareness is, and you found it in the most quiet way, already present, already here. Before any of the words began, you can allow these thoughts of the dreaming mind to fade now, like the last image of a dream at dawn. Present, then softer, then simply part of everything, leaving only the still, unheld calm behind. Let your breathing deepen. Let your body feel heavier, as if all the watching you have done tonight is being set aside by careful, invisible hands, and is simply settling down. If sleep comes, let it carry you the way the dream carries itself. Not driven, not directed, simply unfolding into a realm where time and weight no longer matter. If your eyes are still open, the next video is waiting for you, ready to continue the journey. But if they are closed, stay there. Stay in the darkness that feels safe and warm. Tomorrow, the precuneus will still be waiting. Awareness will still be flowing. The threshold will still be exactly where it is. But tonight belongs to stillness. Rest well, sleepy soul, and remember, the mind that wonders about its own dreams is already, in the gentlest sense, awake inside them. Good night.